10 is a sufficient assumption question, conclusion properly drawn if which one of the following is assumed. So this question is pretty cookie cutter for a sufficient assumption question, with one exception. The use of the word but is very atypical. Typically, but indicates context and then argument. Here it's not, actually. Here this but just indicates like sort of a change in direction, like it always does, without playing that sort of context argument indicator role that it usually like 98% of the time does, right? So, okay, B's plays are not genuinely successful dramas. Okay, why? See, like I always want, well, like why not? You know, I'm already thinking this is probably the conclusion. And if you go off this guess, this hypothesis that this is a conclusion, you wouldn't be wrong. You could just, I mean, you'll read on and you realize, oh, this is a conclusion. If not, that's okay. Read it twice, second time around. You got to figure out what the conclusion is, right? Why are they not genuinely successful drama? Because look, the roles in these plays express such incongruous motive and belief that audiences, as well as actors playing the roles, invariably find it difficult to discern any of the characters' personalities. Okay, so because it's hard to discern personalities. Okay, but for a play to succeed as a drama, audiences must care what happens to at least some of its characters. See, here we have a conditional statement, right? You see the contrast. The but is used to run the in an attempt to run the contrapositive on this conditional statement. I say in the attempt because it's not actually connected yet, right? And that's what the missing answer choice will do. But let's take a look at this, right? For a play so if you want to be successful, what must you do? Well, it must be the case that our audience cares, okay? It must be the case our audience cares. Look at the conclusion. Conclusion is trying to say they're not successful. They're not genuinely successful, right? So if you look at this argument, you know what you need to supply, right? Here's the premise. This is our conclusion, right? Forget this other premise for now. You know what you need to supply. You need to supply that, audiences don't care, right? To make a valid argument out of this. Then you contrapose back and then it's not successful. But that's not what's given us, right? What's given us is that audiences and actors as well find it difficult to discern the characters' personalities. Now think about that, right? It's difficult. It's hard for me as I'm watching an actor to discern the character he's playing, whether the personality is, I don't know, jolly or sad, right? It's hard for me to discern. Now, that's a very different concept from caring or not caring, right? Do you see that? So what I have here for the premise that's actually supplied to me is not that, audience doesn't care. That's not it. Is that I find it difficult to discern, right? Difficult to discern. Now, this is supposed to trigger the contrapositive, right? You see that? It's supposed to trigger the contrapositive back. And how do you suppose we can trigger this? Well, if we say, for an audience to care, they must find it not difficult to discern, right? If you do this, if this is your supplied, right? If this is your supplied sufficient assumption, here I'll just write it on top, so this way you can see it easier. I mean, imagine the two just sort of melding, right? Then with our premise that's given, you can contrapose this back, fold this back, get yourself a valid argument. Now, which answer choice says this? A does. An audience that cannot readily discern the personality will not take any interest in that character, right? Contrapose this. If you do take interest, then it can't be difficult to discern, right? You see, that's this. They gave us A gave us the contrapositive in English, I suppose, of this statement. The others are way off, right? A character's personality is determined primarily by the motives, and I don't really care. This is not actually a study, in the dramatic arts. Oh, where does the personality of a character come from? God, who cares? The extent to which a play succeeds as a drama is directly proportional to the extent to which the plays care about its character. See, here, you got to see what this answer choice is doing. They're pegging the success of the drama proportionally to the extent to which the audience cares, right? And look, we don't know how much the audience cares. C still depends on you. If you think C works to support this, you're still assuming the audience doesn't care. Right? Look at our original argument. Where does it say the audience doesn't care? D says, if the personalities of characters are hard to discern by actors, then it's hard to discern by the audience. Okay, but I don't need these two things to be connected. It's hard for the actors themselves to discern the characters, so it must be hard for the audience to discern the characters. All right, that doesn't help me, right? I already know that it's difficult for both actors and the audience to discern the characters, right? Remember this premise? That's what this is. I already know that it's difficult. You don't need to tie these two ideas together in this relationship. I mean, it's not you don't need to. It just doesn't help our argument. All plays that, unlike B's plays, have characters with whom audiences empathize succeed as drama. So I don't know. I mean, empathize, I guess you can sort of say, oh, empathize is similar enough to care, although they're pretty different concepts, right? Care is much broader than empathy. I think if you empathize, you certainly care, but if you care, I don't think you necessarily empathize. So that I think breaks it. But even if you replace this word with care, it still doesn't work, right? All plays that, unlike these plays, have characters. So if you care, then you succeed, right? I mean, just look at this. This, right? This is not. I mean, it's not what you need, right? It's like basic logic lessons.